Mystical place full of promise and adversity. And all of that lies ahead. The field colorful, pristine, every car a potential winner. One car looks like one of the Pescarolo Garage Peugeots jumps for the pit lane, as does the WR Peugeot. Meanwhile, the front row, a brace of Audis, will bring the cars off the corner. The Cadillac SDS safety car will pull aside, and we will be underway. The green flag waves at Le Mans.
Is that the champion car that's took a big hit there?
Yeah, it looks like the champion car was slow away, but the Dome's already fighting with the two lead Audis into the Dunlop curve.
The champion Audi R8 was one of the cars slow away from the grid. Ralph Kellner's at the controls, but he's on his way now after a collision there, a light one, coming off the final corner onto the start-finish straightaway.
But the Dome has in fact jumped into second spot, but he's going to have his work cut out to get around that Audi to lead this lap. There's the 16 car, that's one of the Orica Chryslers. That went well in qualifying, and they should be relatively bulletproof with those V8 engines. There he goes past Frank Bieler.
That's Olivier Beretta in the Chrysler, swinging on to the Monsoons.
Well, I think this is what we're saying about the red mist. It doesn't matter. It's 24 hours long. They're going at it straight away. But Aiello got away quite well. I think what actually happened with Kellner's in the champion Audi was the car didn't pick up very well out of the last corner. When he put the throttle down, the engine just didn't pick up correctly, and he dropped back, but he looks to be running okay now.
Yeah, it bobbed down big time, didn't it, coming out of that forward chicane.
Now the first of the Monsoons chicanes. Right. The next one dives to the left.
Oh yeah, a lot of traffic. Whoa! Somebody touched there, I think.
Lighting them up.
Just lighting up the tires, maybe.
One thing that's happening now is Frank Bieler's down in fourth position in the Audi, and as much as he knows in his heart of hearts it's a long race, he'll want to try and get back up into at least second position as quickly as possible. So you can see the other Audi, his teammate with Aiello, just pushing off into the distance.
They got well over 200 miles an hour. Imagine when this was one long straightaway, nearly 3 miles in length. And the battle was on to see which could be the first car to break 250 miles an hour. And it was done.
There you see one of the MGs, in fact both the MGs there, as they come out of that second chicane. There's the hump that's now been reduced in length, reduced in height after a couple of flying episodes there last year. They've taken the top off it, but it's still obviously quite daunting when your head's only 18 inches above the ground. It still looks like quite a hump.
And the MGs with that bright day-glow green nose on the car. This is down into Mulsanne Corner, so named for the nearby village.
Just to our left is the village of Mulsanne. They've made that approach to Mulsanne now like a kink on the way into it. I'm not so sure that it wasn't safer like it was before. It's just a straight run. I think part of the problem is they've had to put a traffic circle there to everyday traffic.
Well, the Bentley is pulling alongside Stefan Johansson's powder blue and orange Gulf liveried Audis, then dropping back. That's the number 8 car, shared by Andy Wallace, who started, along with Butch Leitzinger and Eric Van der Poel.
Gulf, of course, two-time winners here in 68 and 69, the GT40s. They won in twice in succession there, so Gulf, a very familiar colour to those a lot of the French visitors here.
Well, when you look at it, there's one thing that's quite clear is the Bentleys certainly have got some straight line speed, because that was something they were lacking in the qualifying. They were certainly down in what they were in pre-qualification, but we saw it attacking the Audi there, so they've got their straight line speed sorted out, something very important.
Now they've got those slightly smaller tyres on the GT division on this LMP 900. They have a slightly smaller tyre. Does that help them much on top speed?
It certainly doesn't hinder because it is a smaller frontal area, but also the other thing is with the roof, it means that they can have a smoother airflow over the top of the car and over the rear wing as well. So in theory, the actual GT1 type cars, they are a little bit quicker in straight line, but also they've got bigger restrictors as well.
They've got bigger restrictors, which gives them more horsepower because they use more fuel. And of course those smaller tyres too. I imagine the tyre wear is going to be higher than it would be on the bigger tyre.
Yes, in theory, but really now with Michelin, I would say, is the leader in the tyre game here at the moment. They can run for quite a long time.
Laurent Aiello leads by 6.7 seconds as the first lap is completed. Now, when the cars came down to take the start, we saw 2 cars dive for the pit lane. Andrew Marriott can tell us what happened.
Well, I can tell you what happened to the Pescarolo garage. Christian Tinso had made the wrong call on tyres. He was on full wets and he came in, changed the slicks, and they just topped it off with a little bit of fuel, and he's back in the race, so it lost him about 30 seconds. But I think the other garage of the Speedy team is also about to come in the pits. All the guys getting ready here, so we're waiting to see what happens to that situation. You guys?
I think that Speedy car, Alan, you spotted them dripping some fluid as they pulled off for their reconnaissance lap. There may be a problem with that car.
Yeah, when they pulled out, then there was a little bit of fluid coming out of the back, but whether that just because they're heating the engine up for a little while to build up a pressure, but certainly it's not good to come in at this stage of the game, but it's not all lost as well.
Terrific battle going on here for second. Aiello just disappeared at a huge rate. But a very big battle going on here for second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh and eighth right there.
I'll tell you the one person that's interested me. We're talking about Kellener's at the start of the show in the champion Audi. He's already caught up in this battle and he's fighting his way past.
Good look there at Jan Lammers. You see that interesting checkerboard paint job? That's actually a marketing scheme. Companies were approached about contributing $2,000 US to the support of the team, in response for which they got their name in one of those little squares and a selection of souvenirs and visits with the drivers. It's worked out very well for them. On board the Bentley with Martin Brundle.
Boy, great view there of some serious drafting down the straight as he goes past the Orica, the 16 car there. That was a great bit of drafting there. Just see how well it worked.
Yeah, it shows that, like we were saying before, the Bentley certainly is pretty quick.
Yeah.
But also, if you see up ahead, Frank Biela is just trying to get past the dome, but he doesn't have quite enough speed just at that point. And now, I would say that it's going to be very difficult for him to do anything until he gets back round onto the Mulsanne straight again.
Great scrap going on here. One of the Chryslers just behind Brundle, then Johansson in the orange and blue Audi, and then the sister Bentley car, currently in the hands of Andy Wallace. Martin Brundle won this race back in 1990, driving with John Nielsen and Price Cobb in a Jaguar. Of course, he had a long career in Formula One. We should point out that we are taking Alan McNish, our booth colleague, away from his duties, testing for Toyota's effort in preparation for joining the Grand Prix grid in 2002. How's it going, Alan?
Oh, generally everything's going very, very well. I've been in Italy the last couple of weeks testing at Imola and Monza. We're progressing with the car quite well. We've been more reliable than we've been anticipating, and so overall I think everybody's quite confident. However, there's a lot of work to do. When I look here though, there's still that little bit of feeling inside my stomach that I'd really like to be driving.
I expect you would.
We've got another break coming up as the field comes flashing around. Meanwhile, one car is in the pits. There is the Walter Gerard WR Peugeot, Stefan Daoudi behind the controls. Looks like his Le Mans is not beginning the way the team would prefer. A look at the top 8. We'll be back with more live as we continue our odyssey flag to flag at Les Arbres. Stay with us. Back live at the 24 Hours. Bob Varsha along with Alan McNish and David Hobbs. Andrew Marriott is in the pit lane along with Calvin Fish. Getting some interesting pictures from French television as they provide worldwide coverage of the greatest sports car event of all. Right now you're watching Jan Lammers in second, then Frank Biela in the defending overall champion car. Not to be confused with the champion car itself, flashing through the screen right there in the hands of Ralph Kellner.
Yeah, certainly the one thing that's happened now is that Frank seems to be now regulated 1 or 1.5 seconds behind him for the last lap. We've got to remember it's the last half mile.
We understand we have reestablished our transmission. We apologize for the technical difficulties as we come to you from halfway around the world in Le Mans, France. Bob Varsha, Alan McNish, David Hobbs, Calvin Fish, and Andrew Marriott. Currently on duty, we have a big staff of Speedvision announcers here to bring you every hour of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And it appears there is rain out there. Heavy rain out there in the Porsche curves. You see just a portion of the massive crowd that has turned out for this race, expected to be 20 or 30,000 more than the 200,000 who showed up last year, and it is now pouring out there.
Look at that. Now, this is absolutely a driver's nightmare. Slick tyres, which they all decide to go on. And look at that rooster tail. I mean, you'd have to be so careful in this.
Well, the thing is that on slick tyres, the tyres are very smooth, and the aquaplane, in 5th gear, the car will be aquaplaning coming down there. The teams will have seen this on the television and being able to radio to the drivers behind Laurent Aiello. He's the first car. He's the one that will feel every single problem.
Now, we should point out, as you're watching these pictures of a rain-soaked racetrack and rain pelting down, it is dry and sunny in the pit lane, and
Stefan Johansson's off.
Yes, that's at the Indianapolis corner. Stefan Johansson's gone in a bit too quickly, and the nose is off the car, the rear wing, etc. He's had an accident, spun coming into the corner under braking.
This, of course, is normally an incredibly fast corner approach, but in situations like this, obviously these guys taking it very coolly. But
see the track marshals swarming out there.
With slick tyres, as Alan said, when the water the way it was raining earlier on today, and obviously the way it's raining over there now, you get this terrific build-up of water just instantly, and the slick tyres just won't handle it.
It's like the crew has a set of everything out in the Audi garage.
Well, that's the big question now, because undoubtedly Aiello will be into the pit, but what are they going to put on? It's dry here, it's wet on the other side of the circuit.
There you see how dry it is in the pit lane, but we can see the showers approaching from our announce position high above the start-finish line.
Look at the gravel coming out of that car.
Oh, maybe low at the left front as well.
It looks a bit down, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly hit the Armco barrier, there's no question about it, but that car is going to be in, as we see, another one into the gravel.
Looks like Eric Bernard.
And he's high-sided, so he can't get out unless they get some help.
Well, let's be honest about it. Aiello's gone past. Aiello has not gone into the pits.
Wow.
He's decided to continue at the moment. He must feel that the dry section of the circuit will gain him more time than he would lose on the wet part. Certainly a brave decision.
That's incredibly brave. That's at the entry to the Porsche curvers there that the number 5 car's gone on.
Well, look at this picture. Here you have shadows cast by sunlight while the rain is pelting down.
Must be a good rainbow there somewhere.
One of the Bentleys is coming straight into the pits.
Followed by the sister car.
I've got to be honest, I think I would be more inclined at this stage of the race to come into the pit.
Well, you simply can't risk it this early.
Well, the other thing is, though, that once the car is on the wet part, there's very, very little the driver can do. There's very little control he can put into it.
Let's get down to the pit lane and Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, I'm down here in the Bentley pit. Both cars, the 7 car and the 8 car, came in almost in unison. You can see the wet on the bodywork of the cars, and they're going to fit the Dunlop intermediates here. They are topping up the fuel, and everything's in very good order here. Of course, this may be a new team. But very experienced people have been running at Le Mans for many years. Calvin, you.
Is in. They're going to be going to full wet. They're taking the slicks off. Fueling went in first. Now the crew goes to work. Normal Le Mans rules. They can't do any work on the car while the fuel is going. I see a leak. Maybe it's just water actually coming out of the left rear corner. Probably a lot of water coming out once they pull the wheel off. 2 guns only on the car. Left side is complete. They're going around to the front, cleaning out the grills. I'm not sure if Frank has been off the course or not. He waved with his hand, but he might have been. He's not out of here. We're still waiting on Johansson. They're waiting to come in here and try and get Stefan's car fixed.
Boy, I tell you what, that move of Aiello's there. Hello, the pace car's going out.
On board of the Bentley now. Up through the S's, headed for the...
See how dry and sunny it is there at the top of the Dunlop curve.
That's a very tricky part, but there's one thing I noticed there. Aiello stayed out on slicks, but he was a full 26 seconds quicker than the Dome on that slippery part of the circuit.
Damage to the Larbra Team Viper GTS machine.
That was quick in qualifying as well, so that's one of the top...
Oh, no! Heavy crash at the Arnage corner.
That's a Celine out as well. The Celine looks to be out. There's the Peugeot.
There's John Nielsen's car there.
Thing is, there's people at the back that maybe aren't seeing those yellow flags in the spray, and they're locking up coming into that. So I think now with the pace car out, it will settle down a little while.
The safety car is out. It's picked up the Panos just behind the number 8 Bentley. Stefan Johansson has made it back to the pit area, but look at the damage to the Audi.
Well, big damage down here, Bob. As you can see, the front is completely destroyed. The rear bodywork was up in the air a little bit. I didn't really catch before they got into the garage if there's any major damage back there. You can see the stones and gravel coming out. Mechanics going to work on taking off the nose piece on the car, the crash structure in the very front here. There's a lot of leads pulled out. I don't see any damage to the corners themselves. The wishbones and push rods and everything look okay. Stephen just shook his head like he could not believe how slick the conditions were out there. It looks bad, but I think they're going to get this out of here probably in about, looks like about a 10-15 minute fix, but until they get some of these nose boxes off here, they can't really tell.
Well, we saw last year when they completed a miraculous 6-minute rear end change on these Audis that they have a modular construction and they can do amazing things to these cars if they have the pieces ready.
The champion car also damaged. The end plate on the wing there is swinging. He had a spin down the Porsche curves as well, I believe.
Well, as you're saying about the gearbox change, but that whole engine cover comes off with the rear wing attached. So therefore it's very, very quick to change many parts of the Audi, and that was one of its benefits last year, as well as the speed going around the circuit.
That's the Ascari, the number 20 car with Xavier Pompidou driving. That's a Judd engine too. That's one of the big cars.
Pitted from 12th place. Now, extraction continues out on the race course. The car to the right is one of the LMP 675 cars. That's the Rowan Racing Pilbeam Nissan, as the engine cover comes off the back of the champion Audi.
And there was Aiello, had already come round behind that slow-moving car. So Aiello managed to hang on to the road there. So it seems like he's must have incredible feel for this car in the wet.
Laurent has got incredible feel generally. He is I've raced against him and I've raced with him. He's been my teammate here twice in the last 3 years, and the guy really knows how to drive.
Calvin, what can you add on the champion car?
They've changed the rear deck because the left rear wing end plate was damaged when he spun off the course. Not majorly, but enough to destroy the handling. Quick change there, lost about 30 seconds, and Ralph takes it back on course.
The action continuing. The number 57 car started by David Terrien of France.
I can ascertain that that is a particularly slippery part of this road. Having had a nasty incident myself there in 1972, the 37 car coming in. Not looking too happy. That's one of Dick Barber's, Reynard Judd's running in the LMP 675 class. They were really hoping for better things.
That's Milka Duno from Caracas, Venezuela, one of 3 female drivers in the field, bringing that car in. Last year, Dick Barber ran GT Porsches. This year, he has moved up to the prototype class with the LMP 675. Local yellow out in the Arnage area. Still very wet on the Mulsanne. Dramatic start to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. We'll be right back. We are back live at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where Laurent Aiello leads in the Audi over Jan Lammers and Martin Brundle in the GTP Bentley, followed by Frank Villa and Andy Wallace in the second Bentley. Both Bentleys on their return to Le Mans currently in the top 5. But we are under a full course yellow. The safety car is out, and there is the scene of the accident that helped bring it out. And there is one of the victims of that accident. That's the number 61 Celine that was started in this race by Tony Seiler, sharing with Swiss gentleman racer Walter Broom and Charles Slater from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, former owner of the International Motorsports Association.
Aiello's last lap was 2 minutes and 20 seconds slower than his best lap of the race so far, but it was still 48 seconds quicker than the dome of Lammers. This car is damaged badly, Bob. That front end is severely compromised, as they say.
There's one thing, there's now a few people came into the pits, changed over to the wet tyre, which is certainly the tyre for the conditions on the back straight on the Mulsanne, where we saw that accident with the Celine. However, here in front of the pits it's dry, so the drivers on the wet tyre have got to be very, very careful not to use that wet tyre on the dry part. The drivers on the dry tyre have got to be very careful on the wet, so even although you're out there going slow, you're still having to concentrate and make sure there's no mistakes.
Repairs continue up and down the pit lane to a number of cars. Calvin Fish has more on the Dick Barber Reynard Judd.
Well, Milka Durno got caught out in these conditions, and the concern for the crew right now is not just body work, but there's major damage around the front bulkhead. And they were probing in there to see what it's really got into, and they started to get into some of the pickup points. They're probably going to have to retire this car. Carbon tub, of course, as you can see, and that's not repairable in a race-type situation. So the concern is whether they can get this car back on course, but it really ripped into major damage on this car.
That's a great pity. Now, that's an example of an LMP 900 chassis that has been modified to fit the rules of the LMP 675 kilo class with a smaller engine, a V8 Judd, rather than the V10 that powers the LMP 900 cars. One car, make that two cars in the class, have been built specifically to the LMP 675 rules. Those are the MGs. They have to be ballasted to bring them up to the minimum weight. 2-liter turbos, they are a terrific package in that class. There is your race leader, Laurent Aiello, in the number 2 Audi.
Right, just look there. That's where the Stefan Johansson car went off about 4 or 5 minutes ago, and it looks significantly drier immediately now.
Yeah.
In 4 or 5 minutes. So therefore the rain comes down very, very quickly, but the circuit can dry extremely quickly, and this just makes the tyre choice so difficult, but also driving conditions as well.
Because it's quite warm. When the sun comes out, I mean, the temperature goes up like 10 or 15 degrees instantly. You know, we're a long way south here, and the weather here predominantly is pretty warm, so when it stops raining, it dries out really quickly, so it makes tyre choice an absolute nightmare. And Aiello decided to stay out on those slicks, which, boy, Alan McNish said was very brave, and I think he was incredibly brave, but it certainly seems to have paid up for him.
Well, I think certainly when the circuit was under a green situation, it was extremely brave. But now it's under full course yellow. He can rest. He can now use the time to decide what the weather's going to do.
Yeah.
And he can pick his moment to come into the pit if he has to. But the likelihood is, the way the showers are going, the way the track's drying, it is going to be a fantastic decision, because when the pace car goes in, the circuit will be a lot better.
We had a quick look at our first Michelin field summary, and it's difficult to keep track of what's going on because the weather is absolutely bizarre here at Le Mans, and the running order constantly changes as cars dive into the pit lane for repairs or perhaps extra wing, maybe a little less wing, maybe a change of tires. It is pretty chaotic down there. I haven't seen weather like this since the Malaysian Formula One Grand Prix. Look at that bright sunshine out there now at Indianapolis.
Now that same shower has sort of swept across the bottom end of the Mulsanne Straight now, so it went diagonally from Arnage, Indianapolis area across the golf course and has reappeared on the straight. So although it's drying up rapidly where we saw all the incidents, first of all, Stefan Johansson and co, they've all come in for more work on the cars. And now it's raining on the other side of the circuit.
You had a look at the Callaway running at the back of a long line of Porsches. Porsche, the winningest brand in the history of this event. The race leader, Laurent Aiello, now dives for the pits. We'll take a quick break and return and let you know what happens.
Welcome back to Speedvision's live coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Major carnage down here. Well, not carnage exactly, but major drama here in the leader's pit, the number 2 Audi. He's gone off course, made contact in the left rear corner. Slight rear wing damage, but the crew are looking at that left rear corner, and they are going to work. Now, last year, when we saw problems there, they did that rear end change, but they obviously think that they can get this problem fixed effectively. The rear deck is ready to go back on the course, and the mechanics are actually, it's difficult to see in here, but they're definitely doing some work on the left corner of the car. Looks like the bottom toe link may have got bent, and that's the only thing they're going to replace. So this should be a quick change, and then they're going to try and get him back out. I don't see anything else. It was just a slight scrape on the left deck of the car, and Reinhold Joost oversees the operation. He's looking at his watch because there's a cutoff line here. If it's going to take too long, they could probably do one of those flying rear end changes.
All right, thank you very much, Calvin. And right there, I must say, you see one of the biggest problems with trying to cover the defending champions at this race. The security around the Audi pits has been absolutely airtight, making our lives
It's sort of a bit pathetic, really, isn't it? I can't imagine what they're trying to
well, it's absolutely
establish really there. But
unacceptable anyway. Is what it is.
Well, I think to some extent what they're trying to do as well is to make sure that the mechanics get the most space possible to be able to effectively do their job and do their work, because there's obviously a lot of interest in that particular pit stop.
Well, now, Al, what about his decision to stay out on those slicks?
Well, as I said earlier and changed my mind, I'll change it again. Obviously a bad one.
Now, there's David Therian. He was involved in that big crash down at Arnage. They got him back out. He tried to limp the car back around to the pits, but apparently lost steering and has now buried it, well, right at the pit entrance in the gravel trap.
Boy, that car was pretty deranged at the front end. There's the champion car, which got off to a very bad start when that thing bogged down coming out of this Ford chicane there. Then he had a slight off. They changed the rear bodywork, but it didn't do much damage.
Well, funnily enough, now the rain has come to the main straight, and it's now starting to rain at the start-finish line as well.
Well, they're buttoning up the number 2 Audi once again and pulling it out of the garage. There you see the car coming back out. An extraordinary technology there to lift the car off the ground and place a dolly underneath it and just swing it out. Calvin Fish.
Okay, the work has been completed. It was the bottom toe link in the left rear corner of the car. They replaced the deck. Full wets all the way around, of course. Laurent Ariello back on course.
He will be well down the order. Currently led by Jan Lammers in the Dome Judd.
I don't think he lost all that much time.
No, he didn't.
Considering how slowly they're going still.
Another miraculous repair job by the Audi crew.
A miraculous repair job, and of course done at a time when everybody's going so slowly. So he probably only, I don't know if he lost a lap.
The car is so well engineered, so well thought out.
Well, I think certainly part of that is, it's obviously Audi, but it's also part of Yost as well. Their experience here and their input into the design originally of the Audi, and then the updated versions in the last 2 years have been part of that success, not just the actual teamwork that they produce in the pits.
And there's Therian once again in the gravel, having just been dragged out of it. That Viper just wants to stay planted.
Yeah, I think that one's done for the day.
Well, he's in a difficult situation because all the corners from where he had the accident to here are very fast, wide and open, so little steering angle doesn't matter. Where he is now, it's on full lock, right and left.
Well, it comes to a stop. Let's get back down to Calvin Fish in the Audi pits.
Well, I'm here with Dr. Ulrich. Whose decision was it to keep the number 2 car out? Is it the driver, or does the team make that call?
The call in?
No, to keep the car out on the slick tires in the rain. Was that Laurent's call? Did he think he was okay on slicks?
Yeah, I think we saw that there is the pace car going out, and we wanted to use this first lap for taking a decision, because if he runs behind the pace car, there is no big risk, yeah? But the problem was that the lap before, he slightly touched the wall, and we wanted that he feels the car. And then he told us that the car is not straight, and then we asked him to come in. We changed now the left rear suspension, and he's out again.
When do you make the call? You made such a great change on those rear ends last year. When you look at the damage, how bad does it have to be before you just say, change the whole rear end?
At the moment that we are not sure what is damaged, we change the rear end. In this case, we could see it immediately, and it is slightly quicker to change only this push rod.
Okay, thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Well, there you see the safety car still out. It continues to rain heavily as the sun comes out once again along the start-finish straightaway. There's the Callaway trailing the GT class. It'll be coming forward soon. We'll be back. Back live at Le Mans, there's the familiar face to Speedvision fans of Derek Bell with his young son Sebastian. Looking on, Derek working as a consultant to Bentley in its return. And right now, things are looking pretty good because Guy Smith has the number 7 Bentley leading the race. Emanuele Pirro second in the number 1 defending championship Audi. And Gary Formato in the number 11 Panos. It's been a very difficult season thus far for that brand new LMP 07 Panos. Currently, they are shown in the number 3 spot, followed by Jan Lammers, who was leading behind the safety car, but dove into the pits for fuel and tires.
Well, it looks like that was a bit of a bad call, the way they've done that, because they've now had to wait to the tail of the field. They were hoping to get their change and get out just in front of the safety car so they could pull up to the other safety car. There's 2 here, but unfortunately it didn't get it done in the pit in time, and so they're now down at the back.
Explain that concept of the 2 safety cars for us, Alan.
Well, basically, the circuit is so long that there's 2 safety cars, one here based in the pit area and one at Mulsanne Corner. So if there is an incident, they can pick up the people and calm the race down much quicker and also more effectively and safer. And then, when it goes back to green, the 2 safety cars go off, one at Mulsanne, one at the pits, and then it's green. So you've got then a little bit of more strategy if you're in the pits to try and work out what's the best time and whether you can get in, get out in time to do all the work.
Well, the Dome tried that strategy and it didn't work for them. I mean, they literally just missed that second pace car on their exit, so that's put them back, certainly on the road, quite a bit.
We had a look at a couple of the GT2 Porsche 911 GT3Rs in the pits. The number 72 car is the defending class championship machine, crewed by a trio of 3 Japanese drivers, 2 of whom were on the class-winning driver's strength last year. You also saw the 74 car in bright orange. The driver's name was Alphand. If you're a fan of ski racing, you will know Luc Alphand, the 3-time World Cup downhill champion. There's a look at the Classement Général, the GC, the overall running order, if you will, by brand. Still a lot of standing water out there. But it's bright and sunny here on the start-finish straightaway as you watch the number 7 race-leading Bentley in the hands of Guy Smith making his way around. We expect to be back under green shortly. Stand by for more live from the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Welcome back live to the 24 Hours of Le Mans here on Speedvision. I'm Bob Varsha along with David Hobbs and Alan McNish in the booth. Andrew Marriott and Calvin Fish are down in the pit lane. We are about ready to go green once again after a long yellow flag period for some heavy crashes involving a number of cars. And that has entailed a lot of stopping at the pits. Andrew Marriott has more on what has transpired.
The garage we're in at the moment, the number 19, this is the Judd-powered garage. This hasn't been involved in incident. It's got an engine problem. They're working on that. Viper fans are going to be upset to learn that both the 56 and the 58 cars, they were involved in the various skirmishes in that rain shower. They are both in their garages having body work repaired. The 56 car to the front and the 58 car to the rear. I'm not sure if they came into contact or not. So there's been a lot of activity down here. And amazingly now, the sun is shining brightly and I'm getting a tan. Calvin.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Now, there you see David Terrien, who was the driver of that Viper that was crashed hard at Arnage, got back and got stuck into the gravel trap. He's talking to his mechanics on the other side of the tire wall because if the car is going to be fixed on course, it has to be done by the driver.
Yeah, the driver really is the only person that can touch the car. You see he's now getting back out and he's going back across and he's going to have another little explanation. It's one thing we've got to remember, well, certainly for me, I'm no mechanic, and that's why I sit in the seat. I'm the spacer between the steering wheel and the engine. But now in Le Mans, you certainly have to just have a little bit of a knowledge that the mechanics are really the experts.
But I don't think he's going to be able to fix that one in 5 minutes. It looks pretty severely damaged to me.
I think he needs a big hammer.
That car, by the way, is known as the Équipe de France FFS. The French Auto Racing Federation has sponsored the entry of this car for 3 young French drivers. It's a terrific idea. David Terrien, Jonathan Cochet, who has just been named as a test driver for the Prost Formula One team, and Jean-Philippe Dairaud are in that car. But obviously, it's looking like a very short race right now. And while we're on the subject of Grand Prix drivers, here's Calvin Fish.
Up down with an old go-kart buddy of mine, Johnny Herbert. Johnny, Ralph damaged the car early in the run there. Any problems with it, or was it just a bodywork change and he's okay?
No, I think it was just the top wing section that got broken, but I think otherwise everything's fine.
You haven't been back here in 9 years, Johnny. Ever driven here in the wet?
Not that I remember. I remember having a foggy, possibly damp night in '92, and I can't remember it actually raining. I remember that. So I would imagine it's quite slippery, especially down the Mulsanne, because of all the diesel and trucks that obviously go up and down.
It seems, even though it's a 24-hour race, limited practice time, did you have to knock the cobwebs off a little bit this week?
Oh yeah, definitely so. Well, I was driving an Arrows Formula One car on Tuesday and then had to jump into a sports car on the Wednesday, and they're fairly different animals to drive. So yeah, you have to adapt to the weight of the car and the way that the car characteristics are. But at the end of the day, I've got 24 hours to play around with that.
What about the conditions, though, mate? I mean, it's so changeable. I mean, one side of the track is wet, one side dry, and it's a 24-hour race. How do you really approach these conditions? I mean, the main thing is finishing, so you have to be somewhat conservative.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Again, when you're on slicks and it rains out the back like that, it's very, very hard, and sometimes it may be a little river across the track, and unfortunately as a driver you can't see them, and when you hit them there's absolutely nothing you can do. You can think about, well, I'll go a little bit slower, but even sometimes that slower is not slow enough.
Exactly. All right, mate, look forward to seeing you out there.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Calvin. We have gone back to green, and there you see one of the MGs, the number 34 car, making its way around on what is still a very wet racetrack out there in the Porsche curves, David.
It's damp in the Porsche curves. We saw Arnage a few moments ago, which had dried up considerably. The Bentley, of course, one of the LMP 900 cars, bigger engine than the MG. The MG, a remarkable story here. You know, they only gave the go-ahead to build the engine for this car in October. Ooh, side by side through the Ford chicane. So everybody.
A good look at the Bentley there as well, the number 7 car currently shown in the lead. Now, before I said it was Guy Smith in the car because that's what official timing and scoring was listing. In fact, it is the man who started the car, Martin Brundle, who remains at the controls as the MG tries not to go a lap down to the race leader, and the bright sun breaks out once again.
I'm very surprised at the actual efforts that the MG is putting up to try and keep onto the lead lap, because really at this stage it doesn't matter a heck of a lot whether he's just in front or just behind. But Martin Brundle is probably the right man to be at the wheel of that car at the moment. He's got probably the most, well, definitely the most experience in there of this place and also of the conditions.
34 car in the hands of Anthony Reid, whom we heard from at the top of the program, currently shown in 39th place, 7 laps down to the race leader. Make that 8 now. We thank you for your emails, and you can email us here if you have questions that you would like to hear answered on the air or perhaps on our eSlam speed line. Just go to the speedvision.com website and follow the instructions. We already have a few emails in hand. One from Jay in Allen, Texas wants to know if we'll see the Bentleys race in the American Le Mans Series in America later this season or next year. I can say that my understanding is that is in fact the plan after Le Mans, is to bring the Bentleys to America. Rick in Doylestown, Ohio wants to know whether Mario Andretti was offered a ride this year, or did he choose to sit out the year? Well, I think it's fair to say that Mario chose to sit this year out, but in fact Mario Andretti is here working with the Audi team now.
Yes, he is. Mario's got an association with one of Audi's main sponsors, Infineon, and he's over here giving the support. I saw him earlier on. He looks in good spirits. But the one thing that Mario wants to do is win this race if he can. He doesn't just want to compete. He's done that many times. He's won everything else, and if he gets an opportunity to race in a car that can win, I'm sure he'll take it.
Still see a lot of water out there as Frank Vila, currently shown in 2nd place, makes his way around. Now Andrew Marriott has more on the very competitive dome.
Yeah, the dome was very competitive. We've got a problem here with the rear wing. They're working to change it. It's quite a big job. You see the back plane here, down here. This has been knocked off in the accident. They're now going to put a new rear wing on, which obviously is complete. But this is taking a little time. Jan Lammers, who of course won this race in the past with Jaguar, is sitting very calmly in the cockpit. You can also see all these different logos that these various sponsors have paid $2,000 for. The car is completely full. So I'm surprised how long it is taking to change this wing here, but the boys are working away at it, and the Racing for Holland team, I'm sure, will be back in the race in just a few minutes' time.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Meanwhile, the other and the Den Bla Avis team, the Danish team, in the hands of longtime Le Mans competitor John Nielsen, is up into the number 6 spot, currently running 4th in the LMP 900 class. But there is Jan Lammers, a former winner of this race, having to be patient. We'll take a quick break and return once again for more live coverage of the 24 hours of Le Mans. Welcome back live to Le Mans. Here's a look at our current class leaders. Martin Brundle in the Bentley EXP Speed 8 leads GTP and the overall race. The MG Lola doing very well in the LMP 675 class. One of the Corvettes in the hands of Ron Fellows currently runs leading in GTS. And the sister car, Andy Pilgrim driving, is just a couple of places further back, 21st overall and 3rd in class. Make that 4th in class for the 2nd Corvette. Porsche 911 leads the GT category in the hands of a trio of Englishmen.
Well, I think there's something there that's going to be a very big positive for everybody that's working at Penaos. Klaus Graf has got that car up into second position. He's gained 30 seconds on the Audi of Frank Biela. He's just overtaken him round the outside, and he's already pulled, as you can see there on the screen, a good 4 or 5 seconds. So this is something that's very, very positive for those guys.
Here's the number 60 factory Celine coming in with a deflated left rear.
And of course he's had that for a long time, and those deflated tires, I mean, they thrash around. They can do an incredible amount of damage to the car. Now Biela, we believe, is on full wets. I wonder if in fact the car of Graf is not.
Graf had a big off in the warm-up this morning when a tire went down, wound up in the gravel trap. The young German, very much prized by the team. Now the Celine has made it to the pits, and Calvin is there.
Conrad behind the wheel of this machine, and the left rear is completely tortured here. As you can see, he's driven it around for several miles with a flat tire. The main key is he's got a lot of experience if he got it back to the pit slowly enough so he didn't damage any suspension parts. He could pull the wheel off. I'm sure they'll take a close look there. Looks like the diffuser at the back maybe cracked slightly from what I can see. He may have taken a little bit of a hit there. Don't see any major damage. They're taking a very close look. Meanwhile, the rest of the work goes on. A lot of the teams are now coming in and going to slicks. It looks like he's giving it a thumbs up, putting on some slick Goodyears, and they'll send France back out. Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, well, I'm down at Bentley here. The number 8 car has just come in. This is a scheduled pit stop. They are also going to the slick tyres here. There's a tiny nick on the front of the nose of the car. It's already the tyres have just come off. Look in good shape. They are the intermediates, but we are going on to full slicks. And Bentley, nobody expected these boys to lead. The number 7 car, I don't think will come in for another lap yet, but this is looking really good.
Meanwhile, up in Audi land, things looking pretty cool. Mark Blundell, vastly experienced, has the MG in the pits. Now, out on the track, there was contact a moment ago involving Klaus Graf. Graf and Biela.
Well, this is the last chicane, the Ford chicane leading on to the start-finish, and that was so close. I think they're on different tyres because Frankie Biela came out of that corner quite as quick as he could, but Klaus Graf just had a much more grip, and he was just in at the back of that one car. He didn't want to really get involved in any sort of incidents at this stage.
We were told there was contact there, but I didn't see it.
I think it was just a very close call, yeah.
Well, I would say there's probably a little bit of red Panos paint in the back of that Audi.
Okay, we'll have it your way. Meanwhile, Franz Conrad comes back out, along with the Bentley. On board once again. This is Martin Brundle. This is not the car that was running with the Celine. There is Martin Brundle making his way around. I believe Martin holds the all-out lap record at this track. Something on the order of 3 minutes and 29 seconds. That was before the race course was modified slightly when the hump on the Mulsanne Straight was lowered by about 8 feet. The 12th time this legendary racetrack has been modified slightly.
Yes, that's true. That was in qualifying in 1999 in the Toyota GT1 car. However, there's been modifications to the circuit and also to the regulations, slowing the cars down since then. One thing, the Panos is actually the fastest car on the circuit with a 4 minute 6 second lap. Brundle leading the race, 4 minutes 7.5. Frank Biela, 4 minutes 13.5.
So I should think we'll expect to see Frank Biela into the pits probably this lap, you think, to change those tyres, unless he can see rain out there that we can't see behind us. There's a lot of it around here.
Well, it's one thing that when you're out actually on the circuit you can see the whole thing, but you also look at the clouds driving around and you do get a bit of an impression which way the clouds are coming and also what is coming. I do know that Audi have got a hotline to the local weather station and they'll be getting some information.
That's one thing that always amazed me when I began covering Formula One back in the late 80s, that the teams didn't align themselves with professionals when it came to weather forecasting. We've seen situations where cars are caught out by conditions. That's all changed now, of course.
Yes, and Brundle looks as if he's come into the pit. The car number 7 looks as if it's... Oh, sorry, apologies. It was car number 8 that's into the pit there.
What
And
Brundle did do, though, was dove from the wet side of the racetrack.
He's looking for water is what he's doing. He drove all down the wet side of the track, and he looks like he's slowed up quite a bit. One of his tyres has started to chunk, because he's definitely looking for water.
Well, he'll be looking for water just to cool them down.
Right. He ran all down the inside of the straight there.
Cameraman's going to have to work on his pan if he's going to keep up with these cars on the Mulsanne.
No water to be found down there. He goes over the old hump.
Meanwhile, on the start-finish straightaway, look at that crowd. More than 200,000 people expecting, despite the conditions. A piece of debris either just fell off a car or was kicked up by that Chrysler prototype. Picking up one of the cars fielded by Le Mans legend Henri Pescarolo, that bright day-glow green that he wore on his helmet for so many years.
There you see one of the cars of Henri Pescarolo, the 17 car. That is a Courage with a Peugeot engine being driven by Sébastien Bourdais at the moment. He started the race. That's a street that comes out of a Peugeot 607, one of their luxury model.
Swinging through Tertre Rouge, there's a bump right on the exit, right at the midpoint of that corner as you exit onto the Mulsanne. We stood there the other night for night practice and watched cars go through. The Audis just float through those corners. Other cars jerk violently sideways as the tires leave the ground.
Yeah, it's a lot bumpy that looks.
It's very bumpy. That's one thing that Audi definitely have sorted out. And we saw that Sebring 12 hours last year and Sebring the 12 hours this year, that the car was exemplary over the bumps.
On board with Martin Brundle once again. Meanwhile, the number 72 Porsche 911 GT3, the defending class champion, in the hands of Hideo Fukuyama, Kazuyuki Nishizawa, and Atsushi Yogo of Japan, spent a long time in the pit lane and now has been pushed back into the garage. So the defending class winner having lots of problems. Down to the pit lane and Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, and I'm with DC David Coulthard here. Your man Martin Brundle doing a good job, David.
Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah, I gave him a few words of advice and he's leading, so it must be working.
Long time, of course, since you did this race in a Jaguar. Any thoughts of ever coming back?
Yeah, I'd love to come back, but there's not the opportunity, obviously, with my current contracts, and it's something for the future. But it's nice. This is the first race I've been as a spectator in years, so I'm looking forward to partying tonight when everyone else has to do some work.
How is it being a spectator? And when you get here as an ultra-competitive racing driver, you say, "Oh, I wish I could put that suit on and climb aboard."
Yeah, it's an unusual feeling because I'm very aware of the fact that there's people here working and I don't really want to get in the way. But on the other hand, I want to be able to get in close and see the cars and soak up the atmosphere. You know, I love motorsport, and one of the things as a driver, you lose the opportunity to actually stand there and admire the cars. So to come here as one of the many Brits that are here watching this event is fantastic.
This Bentley effort's great, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great setup. Everyone looks very serious and professional. I know they haven't had as much time to test as they would have liked. Speaking to Martin beforehand, he was a little bit nervous about the wet running because of lack of testing, but they seem to be going the right way at the moment.
Dave, enjoy. I'll go to Calvin Fish.
Well, the number 1 Audi is in, driven by Frank Bieler. Looks like they're going to change from the full wets to the intermediate, so they don't think the track is completely bone dry. You can see there the tyre really just has hand-cut grooves into a slick, so it'll probably be a soft compound, and those hand-cut grooves really just help disperse the water when they get into that hydroplane situation. So Frank is going to stay in. They'll probably do doubles and triples, possibly by night time here on the Audi squad. Alan can probably give us the strategy there with the team in terms of drivers. Everything looks okay. Frank finds it back up.
Well, I think until the conditions settle down, one driver is better staying in the car, and Frankie will stay in that car, Laurent will stay in the other one, because they know the situation best. If you put a new driver out into these changeable conditions, then that can spell disaster. So I'd expect Frank to stay in the car until at least went one way or the other. Alternatively, until these 4 hours is up.
Boy, Bieler here, way off the pace. That GT car, the Porsche there, overtaking him, giving a very hard run through that chicane into the Dunlop curve.
Well, keep in mind, electronic tire warmers are not allowed at Le Mans. So when those tires go on, they are cold. And the track, no doubt, is cold with all this rain. Speaking of fast cars, you just got a brief glimpse of the fastest man on the track right now, John Nielsen, a 4:06 last time around. We'll be back. Welcome back. Here are the highlights of the first hour of this year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. The race began with a packed field under beautiful sunny skies, but they would not last. Laurent Aiello took the car number 2 out strongly, then found himself under sudden showers that caught out Stefan Johansson in the Gulf Audi, along with a host of other cars, including one crash involving no fewer than 6 machines at Arnage. Despite the fact that he was out front and clean, Aiello suffered problems of his own, a broken left rear toe link in the suspension. But as always, the Audi crew was quick to effect repairs with his beautifully engineered car. But while he was parked, the Bentley, in its return to Le Mans, surged to the front in the hands of former Grand Prix star Martin Brundle. And now you are up to date, though, as you see, towering black clouds remain here southwest of Paris, about a 2-hour drive to the department of Les Sarthes and the circuit at Le Mans. On board with Martin Brundle in the Bentley on the Mulsanne Straight. Well, Bentley could hardly be more pleased with the results of their return to Le Mans, I would guess.
Well, I think certainly from their performance in qualifying, they're hoping for a little bit more, but the performance in the race, they're leading by 1 minute and 12 seconds over Pénos, and this is certainly not the situation that anyone would have expected when they saw the grid lineup and saw Audi 1, 2, 3. But there's one thing for sure, is that Bentley have got a good guy in the car in these conditions, in the changeable conditions, someone that knows when to stay out, when to come in, and they've played it 100% perfectly.
You know, there was a bit of doubt whether the Dunlops would be quite up to the Michelin on the Audis. A lot of the teams here running Michelin, Dunlop not quite to the forefront of this sort of international racing for some time now, but a big job to go on the Bentleys, and obviously they passed the first test with flying colours by the look of it, because that rain was pretty bad.
Well, there's the section of the Mulsanne Straight where the bump was removed, and this is a battle for position. The red car just behind the number 7 Bentley is Klaus Graf in the Pénos. First and second right there on your screen. Quickly to Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, and I'm with Don Pénos. He's got a smile on his face, battling for the lead.
Yeah, well, you know, strategy and luck is very important at Le Mans. Strategy is guessing, not brilliance, and we're just kind of guessing the right way right now. We got a wager going each way. If it rains, we got another one car will go better. If it dries, the other car will go better. So right now we got one ride in each way.
Nevertheless, it's better than you hoped for.
Oh yeah, I mean the cars are good, but that's why we're here, because Le Mans, if you give up, then that you think you might not be ready. That's not the case. If you come and do your best, then Le Mans, the old lady will take care of you.
Guys, Don Pénos is not a quitter.
Exactly, not a quitter.
No question about that. Thank you, Andrew. Let me correct myself. That is not Klaus Graf in the number 11 Pénos, trailing leader Martin Brundle. It is in fact Jan Magnussen, who is 1 lap down to the race leader. Graf trails Brundle by 1 minute 12 seconds on this, the 13th lap of the race thus far.
And there's a couple of people coming into the pits. One is the champion Audi of Ralph Kelleners, is in out of camera shot at the moment.
Calvin Fish is there with Kelleners and the champion car.
Well, a last-minute decision. They were going to put intermediates on, and Ralph has now called for slicks, and there's been a real dramatic day for this car and driver. In fact, on the pace lap, we never saw this, but he crashed on the pace lap. They had to come in and completely change the nose structure on the car before he could even take the green flag today. Then he went out, he saw a problem that he had, losing the car once again in the wet at Indianapolis, and that necessitated the rear deck change. But now he's been screaming for slicks, and the team have said, no, we want to keep you on wets as long as we can to make sure that we're not going to get any more rain. So the fueling has been completed. He's got slicks on. He should be firing it up and taking it back on course.
And in the air means the whoops.
Stall the engine. Well, basically, what's happening is with a turbo engine, it's not quite as easy to pull out of the pits from a standing start as it is with a normally aspirated engine. The boost isn't there, the power isn't there, and so you've got to really get a lot of revs on it, sit the engine on the limiter, and basically wheel spin out of the pits.
There's David Terrien's crewman. Terrien has gotten that Viper stricken in the big 6-car crash at Arnage earlier in the hour into the pits, but it remains to be seen if they'll get him out. Now this is the race leading Bentley in the pit.
Leader in and out. That was a very quick stop.
That was purely for fuel.
Looking for the Panos, which is now just entering the Ford chicane. See if Klaus Graf can hustle the car into the race lead before Martin Brundle hits the end of the pit lane, and it's 37-mile-an-hour speed limit. They will be side by side. Down in what there is the Panos to the left of your screen as Graf moves into the lead past Brundle.
Well, I think Don Panos is going to be a very happy man.
I just think he is, yeah.
Well, last year it was a Panos was the only car in the hands of David Brabham that actually led the race apart from an Audi, and this year they're leading again.
There is David Darien's car. What a saga for this crew.
This is part of Le Mans, though. This is the thing. You've got to get the car back to the pits, whatever the condition, because we've got to remember there's 22 hours and 52 minutes still to go.
Jan Lammers. I think Jan Lammers said it best. Le Mans is a place where you go to give everything you have and expect nothing in return. Calvin Fish.
Well, that Viper's made its way back to pit lane. He tried to turn into the garage. It would not turn. So much damage to the front end of the car. He tried to give it a big boot full of power, tried to get it rotated into the garage, failed and just jumped out. You can see the crew trying to crawl around it, trying to scrape this thing literally into the garage there. And at one point, it looked like he was going to block pit lane completely when the Bentley was pulling out. There's a lot of cars here. I see Hugh de Schornack overseeing this because they were keen to see these Vipers still do well. They don't have an official entry here at Le Mans, but they still felt they had a great crack at taking the GTS victory here today. But this one is going to be a lengthy stop to try and fix this car.
And there is a massive crowd of people, as you saw, photographers and so on, watching this. Of course, this is a French team, a French national team, if you will, for a trio of junior drivers. I'm wondering why they just don't slam a jack under that thing.
Oh, he's driving into the box now.
Now they'll get the thing in the garage and start ripping it up.
I think it's ripped up enough already.
Yeah, don't have much ripping up to do.
Whoa, and just to the right of that pit, one of the Chrysler prototypes came sliding to a stop.
It's Yannick Dalmas coming into the pit a little bit too hot, locked up the rear brakes. Certainly something you don't want to do. You've got to be very careful.
It is a very, very crowded pit lane, as Calvin Fish can attest.
Bob, yes, Bob, it is very crowded down here, very hectic under these conditions, cars flying in and out, but this team is running a very conservative pace. They just said we're just going to tune it down a notch. Their goal this weekend is to get 2 of the 3 cars finished in the event. This car is led by Yannick Dalmas. He's done a lot of the testing and development on this Dallara chassis and has got that Mopar engine, which is really a derivative of the World of Outlaws engine from Chrysler over in the States, so it's been performing very well. Yannick is very happy with the progress, and it's really a long-term program. They're looking for more success next year. Work has been completed, full wets off the car, gone to Michelin slicks.
An engine that began life as an 1,800 horsepower pro stock motor, then was modified for dirt track racing in sprint cars, and now here it is making its attempt on the 24 hours of Le Mans in the hands of Yannick Dalmas, winningest driver of the 90s here at Le Mans with 4 victories and 2 second place finishes. These guys, however, have another story to tell. We'll be back.